Call the April 22nd regular meeting of the Tolland Town Council to order. You can all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have one proclamation on the agenda tonight, which is for International Firefighters Day. Thank you, first of all, thank you, Councilor check for providing some of the draft language. My plan was to share it at a volunteer firefighter meeting. Or
Are you still on board of director? You're on. Yeah, so May 5th.
okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
okay, so I can read it today, and then we can present at that meeting if you'd like to do that.
Did you? Were you still on board, director? I retired. You're retired. Okay.
So I'll make sure I'm doing it right. But I'll read a few highlights from here. So whereas firefighters dedicate their lives to the protection of life and property, and sometimes that dedication is in the form of countless hours volunteered for many years, and others it is many selfless years working in the industry, in all cases at risk the ultimate sacrifice of a firefighter's life. And whereas International Firefighters Day is a time where the community recognize and honor the sacrifices that firefighters make to ensure that their communities and environment are as safe as possible. And the Tolland Fire Department, led by Chief John Lytle, comprises a committed team of 20 volunteer firefighters, officers, and 8 career public safety officers who work diligently to enhance community safety. This department plays a crucial role in addressing a variety of emergencies, including fires, medical incidents, accidents, and hazardous situations, responding with efficiency and effectiveness. And the firefighters are engaged in thorough training and regular drills to ensure they are well prepared for any challenges that may arise. And I, therefore, Jacob Murray, Chair of the Tolland Town Council, on behalf of the Town Council and community at large, now call upon all citizens of the Town of Tolland, patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the day of May 4th, 2025, in recognition of the patriotic service and dedicated efforts of our fire and emergency services personnel. A big thank you to our fire department, both our full-time staff and our volunteer staff. They do a tremendous amount for our town. That we have an opportunity to recognize them. With that, we'll go to public petitions, communications, and public participation. Any subject within the jurisdiction of the Town Council, please note that there is a 2-minute time limit for public comment. So with that, I'll go to the room. I'll go online. I'll go back to the room. Go online. Go back to the room one more time. Go online one more time. Seeing none, I'll close out public participation. So with that, we're going to go to our public hearing item 6.1. Consideration of a resolution to change the policy concerning disposal of surplus real property. I'll open the public hearing in a minute. I'll just give Dave an opportunity to give us a brief summary of this item, and then we'll open the public hearing.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. So the intent behind this is to increase the flexibility that you all have in the disposal of surplus property. There's a number of reasons behind that. The idea being, one, we conducted an inventory of town-owned property last year, and there are several road right-of-ways and little miscellaneous pieces of property that the council agreed we should work to kind of get off the books and out of the tax rolls. The way the current policy is written, it would be, there were some concerns from the Planning and Zoning Commission about how the disposal might occur. It potentially could allow a random buyer to come in and create a zoning nuisance or something like that by buying a piece of property and dragging a trailer onto it, or something to that effect. So this gives you more flexibility to set an acquisition price and a sale price. The general framework remains the same, where it goes to abutters first, and then it goes to the community at large. And then anybody who makes a purchase would have to demonstrate to the council what their intended use of the property would be. So the idea here was to, basically to increase your flexibility to offload property as you see fit.
Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing item. Is there a second?
Second.
Either one. Okay. Lisa heard. All right. There's nobody on Zoom, so we'll go just do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Those extensions or abstentions, that passes unanimously. So the public hearing is now open for public comment on item 6.1. Is there any public comment? We'll go to the room first. Go online. Go to the room. Go online. Go to the room one more time. Go online one more time. And like public comment. So I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. And I think we can just do this in one motion. Close the public hearing and adopt the resolution to change the policy. Okay, is there a second? Second by Councilor Shay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No, so it's like passing unanimously, so I will say that policy passed. So we can close out item 6.1 and go to item 7A, reports of boards and committees responsible to the council. So I will go to Councilor Yudichak. What's the firehouse committee? I think.
So we'll be meeting this month. I can give an update. We haven't met, but I can give you an update what the next agenda will be if you want.
Sure.
Okay. So we haven't met in a while just because we have a new architect and we should be getting those plans and hopefully prices for our next meeting. So that would be great. One of the agenda items that's coming up is we potentially use $3,000. I guess recently an injector pump just went in a septic over at Station 440 on Plains Road. So there's gonna be some discussion, I guess, if we should use the money out of the project. It should be a good discussion. I'm not sure how I personally feel about using this money out of a fund, but it'll be a good conversation with all, I think there's like 8 of us on that committee. So we'll be talking about that, and then I think that's really it. Those are the 2 items. A lot of talk will be mostly about the architect and his design and hopefully the pricing. So that's really it for the firehouse subcommittee.
Sorry, what's that meeting again?
That is the second Thursday of May.
The second Thursday.
Yeah, big Thursday, right?
So
Yeah,
that,
it's been so long we've been together, but
so that won't be after the next council meeting. So okay.
yeah, so we'll see what comes out of it, and yeah,
Okay.
that'll be good.
Yeah. Just a quick question on the pump.
Yeah.
I don't want to turn this into a firehouse subcommittee, but just like, is that something that we would normally take out of a project budget because it's not the roof, or not related to the roof, or is that?
I think that's something that Megan's looking at now. We're looking at where the funding should come from and whether it's something that John would pursue too. So we haven't come to a decision on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what makes the conversation, and I raised those concerns to Megan, and she respects them. So we'll see. In a couple weeks, a lot of things can change in 2 weeks as well, of course. But I did ask, one of the questions I did ask Megan was, you know, as far as the septic part of the project, that's not. So
Yeah.
that's just, so we, I don't want to put the cart before the horse because we all have to discuss it as a group and get more details, but that's, you know.
Okay. All right. I'll let it play out.
Yeah, let's play out.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any EHHD or CROG update, I don't know.
I don't have
We've,
any- yeah.
okay. I think, am I missing any boards and committees since
Just continue with
we haven't met?
nothing, yeah.
Yeah, I think Mike provided an update to counselors on contaminated wells. Mike, I don't know, is that something we can talk about in a public meeting, or is it more something we should keep confidential for now and just share amongst ourselves?
Well, I can certainly talk about it in generalities if you want to talk about it, or
I think it'd be good just for the record, just high level. I don't.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, we're working, we meet bi-weekly with Deep and EHD to go over any issues either um in the Lakeview Heights area. That's kind of where we're looking now. So Langen, you authorized Langen last month to continue to look into that. So they're looking at some analysis they did at some of the Lakeview other residents that they got data from, and so that'll be shared with Deep once we get it done. So that's kind of the main issue with what's Langen's doing right now. We're also at the behest of kind of Brian, he had talked about trying to draft some language that would possibly go to our legislators to talk about anything that can help to mitigate or deal with water softening systems at the state level. So we drafted some language with EHD about that. So that's another thing we're working on. So those are kind of the two main things we're doing right now.
Okay. No, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the updates that we're getting, because I know we don't meet regularly as a task force as needed, so I appreciate it.
Sure.
I think I'm missing anybody, so I'll go to 7B, reports of town council liaisons, and we'll go around the room. Councilor Butler, anything to report?
Sure. So, Permanent Celebration Committee met April 10th. I was not present at the meeting, but I do have kind of an overview of what's going on. They are in the process of planning the Memorial Day celebration / parade. They kind of solidified a bunch of plans as far as getting the band in place. They have, speakers. They're going to have at various positions to try to increase the amount of people who can hear what's going on. It says they have one at the jail museum, one at the town hall, one at the ceremony site. There'll be 2 parade announcers. They're going to be Kathy Bach and Al Mancini. They approved the replaying, what the Boy Scout troops will do, what the Girl Scout troops will do. So that is going to be May 25th.
It's coming up.
It is.
Councilor Udacek.
Yes, the Commission of People with Disabilities met last week. Unfortunately, I was unable to make that meeting. Same as Jen, I'll go over some highlights from that committee, and is the staff liaison. So if I missed anything, I'm sure.
No, they just talked about ongoing plans. They might do another survey. They're going to participate in the program on Monday night. There'll be a vendor there that Teresa will speak about when she comes. And they're continuing to do their newsletter monthly and post that on their website. So,
Yeah, so the next one is going to be
transportation, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Different programs.
They're also working on survey and website stuff. I think you mentioned earlier they're gonna postpone or cancel May's.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else?
That is it for me.
All right. I'll go to you, Chris.
The Historic District Commission met last week. I could only attend the first few minutes because we also had a meeting that night, the budget presentation. But the HDC discussed or it approved an extension of a COA for the United Congregational Church, their solar project. just extending the amount of time they had as they're working through that project. They also discussed a COA application for installing gutters on a particular property, and also whether particular property that wanted to change their front porch, whether that needed a COA. And then they also discussed whether the certificate of appropriateness, the COAs, should have expiration dates or not. And then they discussed some various other old business, no parking signage, additions to the website, and historic streetlights that are coming, I think. So that was last week.
Thank you. Councilor Sherry?
So the Water Commission met yesterday. I was unable to attend that meeting. But Beverly, if there's anything important to talk about, the only thing I did recall that Brian had actually, our town manager had mentioned that there was some leaks in the big tank, the water tank that had to be repaired, and that was completed. Otherwise, I don't think there was any major.
Yes, they did approve last night to update the systems evaluation that for all of what the Water Commission owns and the tank and everything with Tatum and Howard. It was last done in 2021. And then they also approved hiring Gardner Peterson to do surveys and of the properties that we own and, get that under control too. And Connecticut Water did report that the tank has been fully corrected, the issue, repaired.
So I had two commissions meet since we last met. The Water Pollution Control Authority met the night we had our public hearing or our budget presentation. They had a forum for the first time in a while, so they approved their budget, which did not have an increase to ratepayers for our sewer system, and also approved their meeting schedule for the rest of the year. And then just had a discussion on operations. I think there was any major issues to report. Additionally, the Economic Development Commission met since our last meeting, and they discussed, or actually they met at the beginning of the month. I was able to make the last meeting, so I was able to give a report. But just quickly, they discussed a potential purchase and sale agreement with an excavation company, which I gotta give more details about it, but there might be a request from council. It's like director report from us, so I can't have to speak more about that, but sounds like there might be some activity that comes our way with regard to that. That's it. Right. With that, I'll go to item 8, new business, for our quarterly financial update for the first quarter of this year. So turn over to Delita.
Good afternoon, everyone. And this is the third quarter of our fiscal year 2025. So the report that you have in front of you looks a little bit different. And I hope you had a chance to look at it. It's not different in the way that the columns structured or categories, but in the way that revenues are presented as a negative. And also I did include the column for council's proposed budget. Just for transparency, and so we can, as you look at the current numbers, the actuals, the projections, you kind of can see the proposed budget and you kind of have that visual in front of you. So in the report, I did included the reference column 1 through 16 that also represents the notes below. So I hope that helps to kind of follow what I'm trying to say and trying to explain it. So overall, I'm just going to do a high-level introduction and then I'll take any questions you have. The budgetary fund balance is projected to reflect an increase of $505,924. In the FY 2025 budget, initially allocated $300,000 for the use of an assigned fund balance, but this allocation might be not required based on the put-in projection. Estimated revenues are anticipated to exceed the revised budget by $467,263. This favorable projection is primarily due to unexpected increase in investment income totaling to $561,247. Additionally, property tax revenues are projected to exceed the revised budget by $161,191. And licenses and permit fees are expected to contribute additional $121,274. It is essential to acknowledge that this revenue growth may be partially offset by a projected shortfall of $15,102 in the charges for current services revenue category, as well as anticipated unspent fund balance of $300,000. Furthermore, there are two appropriations designated for water testing totaling of $61,775. One that was allocated in August 14, 2024, $10,200, and one $51,574, $5 in February 26, 2025. On the expenditure side, estimated costs are projected to be lower than the revised budget by $38,061, indicating savings in several categories. Payroll savings of $2,938. Other savings includes $20,484 in professional and other services, $9,598 in advertising and training, $29,915 in oil and fuel costs, and $34,000 in payments to governmental agencies. These savings are counterbalanced by shortfalls in disposal fees totaling $27,395, referendum costs of $7,454, legal fees totaling to $11,000, and contracted services for agriculture and pastoral needs, which totals $12,925. That's the high level report, and
Great.
I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you. I'll open it up to questions from councilors.
I need to spend more time looking at this,
Okay.
really, so I'll have to email you questions.
Absolutely.
Councilors have questions?
I was trying to review the last one, Lisa was here, I think it was January 28th. The minute, so this is more than what we're expected than back in January.
It's growth.
Okay. And were any of these funds being projected, included in our plan of the budget for the one that we just voted on?
Could you clarify the question?
So say there's what, 500, thought it was close to $1 million?
No, 550.
550, okay, so was any of that 550 put towards when planning the budget we just voted, like the council just voted on?
No,
Or is this going to go into the unassigned fund balance?
correct. It's gonna go in under unassigned fund balance.
With the,
And I just wanna know that this favorable surplus is primarily due to investment income. We looked at the 5-year averages, what we invested in cash, the average of interest rate, and average of what we earned, what we budgeted. So the rates are falling down. And I'm happy to share the analysis. And again, it's an average base. So I'll say next year in FY26, they put forward 800,000 in the budget. I'm hoping that's going to be the case, but going forward in the next following years, based on the trends and how the market goes up and down, it just, this is great years to have and great years to put in an assigned fund balance. But that's primarily source why we have such a low surplus.
I have follow up on your Liz, I'll let you.
No,
finish it.
go ahead.
Okay. So that means like, yeah, so in the current budget, if it's a 5-year average, you still have 2020 interest rates sitting there and you're really low. So the
Yes.
next year,
It was
Yeah.
very, very low.
Yeah.
It was 0.07 or something like, it's really, really low.
okay,
We were in actually, and I'm happy to send that table, I just did it for my visual to understand.
mhm,
But what we put forward, we actually had a shortfall in that line item.
mhm. Okay. And then for the proposed budget, the one that is out in referendum now, 2020 would have fallen off those calculations, right? Because it's,
Yes, I didn't, I didn't include 2026
Yeah.
because we're working now on a 2025, just estimated what we put it in the report and you can see the
Okay.
numbers. And we have a report on investment in
Okay.
that Chris will.
okay,
2021 was still very low.
yeah, and I think they were
2022
doing,
was pretty low too.
yeah, I think they were probably bottomed out in 2020. I think they were like zero bound for a while. I think
Yeah, I
COVID-
don't, even in 2021, they budgeted
Yeah.
very much. I know borrowing borrowing
Yeah.
costs were still incredibly low,
Okay,
like less than 2%.
yeah, I don't know, I don't remember the exact history, but you're probably right. But the point is that as we get farther along, those years will start to drop off and the estimate would go up. Because you're getting rid of those really low COVID pandemic years as you move forward. Councilman.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge sort of the through line that we had when we discussed the budget last year is sort of a desire to be as accurate as we can in projecting revenue, which is why I appreciate that we at least with respect to tax collection rate, we increased it from 99% to 99.1%, because we've historically ended up with additional revenue, whether it's investment or otherwise, that we weren't expecting. And so that's great. It's great for the town. I just think especially in years like this one where the tax burden is difficult on residents, it's important that we try to be as realistic as we can with our budget, and so that we don't end up with money going into unassigned fund balance when it could have been used to offset some tax increases. So I guess I'll just say that I appreciate that at least this year we tried to be a little bit more realistic with the revenue collection, and I understand that it's difficult to project investment income, but at least this year I think we made a small step in the right direction about accurately trying to predict the tax collection revenue. So thank you.
Welcome, and I just wanna be more transparent on the line item at the high level that you see. I put it the collection rate, right? But please keep in mind that in the property taxes, we have not just current levy taxes. We do have prior year taxes, interest levy, motor vehicle supplemental. So that spikes a lot, that collection rate, because we compare to the budget, to the revised budget and the actuals. So because our motor vehicle supplemental revenues increased and for unbudgeted amount, that's why you see that high collection rate on that line item. So I just want to be very clear right now when you look at when you're looking at the report.
Okay.
If that makes sense. If we look just the line by line item and we look what is the collection rate right now for current levy taxes only, it's 98.06%. So that's, I was very trying to be
No, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Question.
Fine now.
Sorry, I'm just adding absolutely.
That's your check.
Thank you. Everything goes in the unassigned balance sheet. These ones, I don't know what page it is in our packet. The one that lists out emergency services, finance, human services, public works, all those. And department, there's no way for their overages to go back into their budget. Is there? Since it was originally put in their budget from last year.
If they have expenses that eligible in to expense for this year and we didn't, for example, they didn't receive the invoice or something like that, we can encumber some amounts, but it has to be really legit encumbrances. But anything unspent, it's going to the bottom line.
Okay. I agree with Chris, it's a tight year and that's, I agree. You always want to put more. I was referred to it as basically one of the easiest way to understand it, and then, but again, the more you use, the more you have to budget for the following years too. So it's a
In
catch-22.
emergency services, if I can interrupt, primarily source of the surplus was $38,000 for law enforcement,
Which,
due to
okay,
favorable rates.
yeah, but. Well, are we gonna talk about the Egypt or is that?
Yes, the next item, yes,
Okay, you think, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Were you gonna talk about Chip?
Egypt updates, and then there's an income report that it's also in your package. Do you want- So you have a Egypt in front of you. So the cash balance for Egypt, as of March 31st, 2025 is $2,790,744. With updates through March 2025 after IBNR and the risk coordinator based on FY 23 and 24 claim experience, we calculated below in the table, and the Egypt unencumbered cash balance is now estimated at 1.6 million for June 30, 2025. Once again, this report also includes some notes in below table, so it's more transparent and more explanatory. Total estimated cash for June 30, 2025 is $2,954,285. The quarterly net income being estimated for April through June is $163,541, including CD interest. Our consultant from Blackton will be providing trend information and other analysis by year end. That information will have an impact on the projected revenues, expenditures, IBNR, and risk corridor amounts. There's an analysis below in the table, and if you have any questions, be happy to take. No changes in the reporting for this item.
Any questions from councilors? One, so the projected cash balance at the end of the year, did you say that's the same number you've been projecting since the last report?
No, it's not the same, it changed.
Okay, what was it before?
I do not have it handy, my apologies.
Okay, that's fine. Do you know if it went up or down?
I think it went up slightly, but it's a rolling, month to month change. So
Yeah.
I take the claims, whatever we had, and that goes in the mix.
Mhm.
So, it's gonna change slightly, but the last 2 months I've been looking at it, I haven't seen huge movements.
Fluctuation.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's helpful, I'm happy to include the prior quarter
Mhm.
projections, if that's helpful.
I think that'd be helpful, at least for something like this, help contextualize it a little bit better. But just in general, I think this is a very nice one. That's good. Any other questions? Yeah.
I'll just follow up on Jacob. So just in general though, sort of the where we are, the balance is sort of in the realm where we were projecting the last quarter. I know it's not exactly the same, but the sort of within reason it's.
Yep.
Okay,
Within the middle. Yep.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions from councilors?
And we have the last item,
Yep.
well, one more item, is the fourth investment.
We have had some changes this month. I'll sort of be brief about it. But the total balances for pool cash and general fund and other funds is 33,607,099. That's all the investments that we have, all the cash that we have on hand. The interest rates overall, are still going down slightly, but not, I would not say significantly. Our third quarter year to date, general fund has earned $316,000 in interest. So we now have a combined year to date total of $987,593. This exceeds our current year budget of $657,000 of interest. That exceeds the budget by $330,000. So that being said, I get down a little further where I'm projecting that we're going to add another $225,000 on top of that by year. So we're continuing to experience a reduction in interest rates, but not significantly, and not as much as or a lot of people we had thought a year ago when we had set up the budget. The town has a total cash balance of $40,596,000 from all funds across all the boards. So that's everything. Going forward, like I said, we're going to exceed the interest budget. I think we'll add another $225,000 on top of that. And going forward, that'll make our total year-end interest projected to be $1,212,000. That's reasonable, and it's I think it's a pretty good number because we only got less than 3 months to go to make that. And I know interest rates are still falling a little bit, but from what I can understand in the market, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of big changes going to affect us. So we'll see what happens, but that's about all I have to report.
Thank you. Any questions? Yep, Councilor Shay.
2 questions. So does that include the 200,000 you're talking about? Does that include the 500,000 related that you mentioned where we got higher revenues coming in?
Yes, so that's the same number. If you look at 1.2 million, you're gonna see 1.2 million included in the report.
Okay, thanks. And then typically what's the terms on the CDs that we hold? Like 5 months, 10
Well,
months,
it used to be
12 months.
Habitually a year, and sometimes a little more than that. But lately, we've been pretty much doing 6 months.
Okay.
And that's been the most, it's worked out.
That's the highest rate?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So there's obviously more risk, when you get a 12-month CD versus 6 month CD at the end of 6 months, you could lose out.
Your percent of 6 month rates could fall out of bed, and but for now anyway, 6 months seems to be all right.
Okay.
But we don't have a whole lot. Let's see. We don't have a whole lot that I keep in CDs. Most of it is in our money market type accounts and our Stonecastle FICA account, which invests in CDs, but we're not locked at any particular time frame.
Oh, okay.
So we're plus it's federally insured, so we really get a really good deal.
I was just gonna say, I think that's where I get the million from.
Any other questions? That's all you have for your report, right? Yes. Thank you for walking us through that. Always helpful to go and see that in detail, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks both.
All right, that brings us to item A2, consideration of a resolution approving a transfer of $76,247.77 from the DOE's audited unexpended balance as of June 30th, 2024 to the Education Reserve Fund. I'm not sure who's talking this.
It's a big piece, now it's a small
Yeah.
pieces.
Go ahead.
Yes, sure.
Mhm.
So, this transfer is happening with every single year. Once the audit is finished and the amount of the audit's been done, completed, the amount that's confirmed, what was the surplus of the, from the Board of Education side. This is where we asking and the Board of Education and asking to transfer to that, education reserve fund.
Thank you. Yep, I think this is fairly straightforward. I know. Any questions or comments from counselors? Councilor Moran?
Just one, the 76,000, so that's out of their total budget that they allotted, they only had $76,000 left at the end of that fiscal year after the audit.
In the general fund.
In the
correct?
general, yeah, so they budgeted pretty leanly, right? There wasn't a lot of surplus at the end of the year.
That's all what we have.
Yeah.
I think I bring it up a lot. So we still need to authorize it, even though that's really their fund. We can't really tell them because that state law changed.
Yes, I think that's what this is,
So that's why there's no vote, maybe, which is fine. I just usually think.
So because it's still an ordinance,
Yeah.
you guys have to vote on it
Okay.
until we get rid of that ordinance, which is on the agenda down the road.
Okay.
We have to do it this way,
Okay.
but next year you won't.
So there's no like violations that we're doing the vote or anything.
Oh,
like
no,
that,
no,
because it's
No, it's the town ordinance supersedes the new directive from the state,
Okay.
right? So because it's still our ordinance, until we get rid of it, you guys have to vote on it.
Okay.
But once it's gone, then it'll just transfer to the Board of Ed, and we,
Okay.
council won't have anything to do with it.
Thanks, Sarah Beth. I just want to clarify.
Sure.
that. Thank you.
Great. There's no more discussion. I'll entertain a motion to transfer the funds to the Education Reserve Fund.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Trying to find. The ambulance fund. So I can talk to this one, give a little bit of an introduction here. So this is an idea that I've been thinking about with Councilor Udacek. We've talked a little bit with town staff to get their thoughts and want to bring it to the council for their consideration and discussion. This is just a discussion item tonight. But essentially the idea is that in town we have lots and lots of different funds. A few of them are quite large, including the ambulance fund. We rely on fairly heavily to make our capital budget work. And although we have great management for our funds now, between our town manager and our finance department, I think it's good to have policies in place that provide some rules for how that money should be spent, so that it's a little bit more enduring than just whoever happens to be in the role in terms of good management. And also kind of just establishes an intent for that fund. So the language here in your packet is a draft. It's obviously not on town letterhead or anything, because it's just a draft that essentially does that for the ambulance fund. It's for the town council's consideration. It outlines what the fund is, where the sources of income are, and then what funds can be used for. And then set some minimum balance requirements. I don't believe, and please, Violetta, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe this would impact anything that's proposed in the current budget. It really doesn't impact how we're currently using the fund today, but it essentially just sets some guidelines so that 10, 15 years from now, very different people working here, there's some guardrails, I guess, put in place for funds. So that I'll open it up to discussion with the council. Thoughts? Councilor Udacek.
Thank you, Jacob. And I just want to let Kristen know about it too. So anyways, yeah, you probably hear my retirement budget season, like, do we have a policy on it? And we still would say we have it on a napkin somewhere. Okay, doesn't do us any good. So it's a very simple thing. I've actually looked around at, honestly, I could only find one other town that has done something like this, and it was actually in Long Meadow, Massachusetts. So I used some of their guidelines, and I went back some other policies, how policies have been written, took some of their language as well. I think biggest thing is, I think it was last year when Lisa gave us a spreadsheet, that number seemed to start falling. And I was getting concerned. I just want to make sure those funds are being used appropriately where they should be, and not being used for anything else, and not being used to pay staff because it does not. So basically ambulance only, and as you see in it, if something does come up, the fire department needs something, the council can vote on an emergency funding. So that's just give you a background on how this came together. So I've been talking about it for quite a while now, but I don't know if anybody else has any questions. If I have to read it, then I saw a couple things.
Councilor Butler?
I just have a few questions.
Sure.
Do we know when the ambulance fund was created?
10, 50, I went all the way back to the no, it's a long time.
And historically, what do we use those funds for?
So historical, I went back 4 years, including FY 2025. So the revenues from ambulance fees, it's been used for any apparatus or any related ambulance equipment purposes. So for example, in FY 2022, there was 640, so Jesus, I think that's what it is. There was, we bought it. So once the project's been created and the project's been proposed in capital budget and those been approved, then we, as July 1, we moved the money from this ambulance reserve fund to fund those purchases related to ambulance, related to any apparatus or tanks. We have a tank 440, we have ET 440, we have ET 240. So all those purchases were made from this fund revenues.
Have we ever used ambulance funds for anything other than EMS or ambulance related? Is it ever used for any other fire department expenses?
So I have to go back in time to look at it. What I looked at it, I didn't see anything except ambulance.
Most recently, I'll just say we did for fire equipment, firefighters. So, and then we just used it for, I think, the trailer, $70,000 in its budget. I don't know what you call it. I forget. I don't know, but it was $70,000. It wasn't really ambulance.
What fiscal year?
This budget season.
FY 2025.
More budget trying, yeah.
I can look at it, but
Yeah.
I can get back to you.
I think we're just distinguishing between, because you mentioned, I think, when you were talking like the tanker and things like that. I think we are just distinguishing between the ambulance side of the fire department versus like the fire side of the fire department.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I think my only concern with the policy as written is that it constrains the use of the funds to certain things with the fire department. And my question would be, why would you want to narrow the ability to use these funds only for certain things? You know, if the fund is meant generally for the fire department, why would you want to constrain yourself to only be able to use these funds for certain things? You know, I have no crystal ball. I can't really look into the future, but it doesn't seem to make sense to write a policy to just narrow the ability to use these funds for only these certain things, and then something comes up in the future where we may have used these funds for that purpose, but now that we've written this policy, we can no longer do that. So we're going to have to be looking elsewhere for funds. I mean, I go this in the town generally, but my concern is are we being overly narrow with this policy, not having the policy generally, but just is it an overly narrow policy?
The ambulance, it's ambulance revenue, that's really meant for ambulance. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's why there's a thing in here, you can vote if you want to like transfer it. It's like, I think the staff changed that fourth paragraph to relate it to EMS on case by case. I can't remember what the original was. Actually, I just. Yeah, I had, I'm sorry, John, I just want to read what I originally had, because to your point, what you were saying, it's like, say if something comes up with a squad truck or something, right? The original was for one-time capital for town council to have authority to approve funding for one-time capital purchases in emergency funding that are not related to ambulances on a case by case. That's how I had it, but it was changed by the staff to just EMS. If that makes sense, and to your thing that it could be used if you need it for something else on an emergency basis.
And now if we wanted to approve these funds to be used for another fire department event currently, what is that process now?
So that would be, you mean capital budgets, related to capital budgets.
Yeah,
Projects, yes.
it's
so-
something other than EMS or, I mean, so if we wanted to use it now for something other than, what does it say now? Ambulances and EMS equipment. What do we do right now?
So if that's in the capital budget proposal, you will see that expense if that's for the fire department, for example, right? You will see the funding coming from the ambulance reserve fund. So that's very clear and, you know, it's obvious, right? And I've seen some council approvals later happening in the fiscal year, in my understanding it's after it's approved, so I think it still needs to come forward for the town council to approve that, you know, move those money for specific project or for specific purpose. So I can pull one example, that was October 5th, 2023, there was a council approval to move some funding, 115,000. I don't know for what, I didn't have time to research it, but I just had to know that there was some approval by council to use this funding. So it still comes to you guys. It still comes here in the council, you know, to approve, to review, to discuss. So it's nothing, we don't do anything internally. We just transfer money and nobody knows.
Yeah.
It's definitely needs to be that approved.
I think, if I may just interject, I think functionally it probably wouldn't make. I don't think it would introduce that many hurdles, if any. Maybe we need to think a little bit about the mechanics of it. We have, I think we could probably put the purchases up into two buckets, which would be the stuff that we buy in our regular capital plan, which we have to vote on anyway, in which case I think the policy essentially kind of just serves as a reminder to town staff. It's like, mainly this is for ambulance equipment, we can propose to use the account for something else, we just need to have the council sign off on. Or the second bucket, which is a true emergency expense, which would maybe not be in our regular capital plan, and something we'd have to buy unexpectedly. Like if, I don't know, the ambulance got in a car accident or something that was totaled and needed to buy a new one, which would probably come to the council anyways. So I think what the policy essentially does is just kind of just make sure that future staff kind of remembers why the policy is there. I don't think a lot of situations where it would be overly bureaucratic or difficult or any more complicated than simply another item on the council agenda to, make an exception to the policy. If that helps.
I think my greatest concern, and I've said this before, is just being overly narrow with the policy. I think it's great having a policy for this. I think it's necessary. But I wouldn't want to limit this fund too much for the fire department use. And then, you know, you have a situation where you're kind of forcing the town to fund, you know, say fire equipment or something else from another fund, just because you limited the ability to use these funds for certain purposes.
Yeah, and I agree with that point, because the last thing I want is to have, you know, they basically put a lock on a box of money that we can't open.
That, yeah, I think you just said it perfectly.
Yeah. So yeah, but then I think that was what or not the last paragraph,
Yeah.
fourth one down was trying to get at, but I'm open, you know.
I wouldn't mind that paragraph being changed back to how the original was, because it did include the fire department emergency. But the couple of items you'll let off, are you done, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The couple of items. This must have been Lisa's too, I can't really keep all this stuff, but 20, 25, 26, I mean, this, I guess you could say ambulance, because it's replaced the UTV 240. But then like in 2026, 27, I think that's where I got replaced both trailers of $70,000. So I don't know, I mean, I guess you could relate that to an ambulance somehow, but that's like the type of stuff I get concerned about, that we start using it for those things, and versus if something needs to be repaired, or like Jacob says, an accident, or we need more medical supplies, or get another ambulance online or something, you know, that's the type of stuff I think that should not be in there. But anyways, that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Councilor Moran?
Yeah, just a couple of questions to clarify. So there's currently no formal policy for the ambulance fund, is that correct? Anyone?
Oh, yes.
There's currently no formal policy for the use of the ambulance fund? Okay, and there's not any just to be clear, there's not any concern that it's been used improperly. But at least within the last handful of years.
Correct, no.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
It's very strict, what we can use. I think internally it's been even communicated to me.
Yeah.
Specific.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I think it makes sense to have a formal policy. I just wanted to make clear that the impetus wasn't because
It's not a
something was
reaction.
right.
No, it's
Yeah.
something probably, you know.
Yep, yep.
But
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, I think it makes sense to have a policy. Obviously, like, I don't think that money from the ambulance fund should be going to like, the parks or something like that. You know, I also want to think a little bit more about making sure we don't overly hamstring the council in making financial decisions. Obviously, within the universe of like, you know, the fire department, right? That's what we're talking about. So, but otherwise, I think it makes sense to have a formal policy. Just the keeping in mind not wanting to make it too stringent and too difficult for council to use the money. So,
Yeah,
that's
go
where
ahead.
the joke goes.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, has Chief Patel been, his thoughts, or has anybody shown this? I had asked Jacob to,
Yeah.
Brian mentioned it to the chief. I mean, it's going to affect obviously his department, and he might, to Jen's point, might have other ideas what he might think about in the future. He may think it may need.
So Chief Lytle has seen this draft. He was invited tonight, but he's at a mandatory state EMS training meeting, so he could not be here. He was under the impression that this was just a discussion and nothing permanent was taking place tonight, but he certainly is more than happy to be involved in the conversation.
That's good. I definitely think we should be involved.
Yeah.
And the number I put in there, something about it was just a number that can, if you guys want to think about changing that number or whatever.
It's too bad they just all. That's the way. So is that like like the ballpark of like what we should have there usually?
I was honestly thinking about, I don't know, like what number, and I think, I don't know who's whatever percent. Yeah, and this.
It doesn't have to be, it
No,
doesn't have
it
to be
doesn't,
now,
like,
but
if
like,
we-
as long as it's based on something.
I mean, 75 is pretty low
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
so that's pretty,
Yeah.
burning it down, I don't think. I don't know, Joe, you're the math person, the percentage, which you have a percent of so much money, I don't know.
It really depends on the use of the fund. I mean, maybe Chief Lytle would have a better
Right.
idea of where we should keep that than us.
Yeah.
Based on historical.
Yeah, and that's my only point, is just as long as we make, we base, ultimately we base it off of something, right? Like that makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
I'm not saying that you didn't, I'm just saying.
No, so the one in like, I guess, like I said, East Long Meadow, and they must have a giant ambulance fund, because it was like $500,000, I don't know what it is, but it was a giant. Yeah, not all the uses, any use of $500,000 not related to ambulance. I'm like, 500, that usually must have a.
Long Meadow, where is that?
That's Massachusetts.
Yeah, I was thinking that
Western
part
Mass.
bigger.
I'm trying to remember.
It is. It might be where, Bay Path College is in that
Yes.
area.
That is correct. I
Yeah.
lived in Long Meadow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, that's a bigger area.
Yes.
I can share this with you guys if you want, just if you wanna see what one other town did. Yeah.
So that's 16,000, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 16,000 population,
yeah.
15,800.
I figured it
But
was
it's a richer town.
Mhm.
The values of the houses is.
Is it more rural? Do they have more commercial business there?
They do commercial, they have a big Y. They have a strip mall and they have some medical centers and they just have a pretty recent, well, maybe not recently, but recent, like, living, community. So they've been expanding, but the house values are really high. Talking about, it's probably now. Over a million. Yeah.
Yeah, they were very nice.
So any other thoughts? on
So,
Yeah.
couple more questions. So this fund, just to be clear, this fund is purely funded by ambulance revenue.
Mhm.
That's it. Okay.
That's fine.
And then secondly, you answered my question. So Chief Lytle has not seen, or he has seen this, but. he
He's
hasn't
seen
really
the
given us
draft,
comments yet?
but he just got it recently, to be fair.
okay.
And he wasn't able to attend tonight, so I kind of left it as a continuing conversation that he'd like to be involved in.
Okay, and then, is this considered a formal document, like a legal document, because we're formally establishing a policy here that's gonna be incorporated, so. In that regard, should our attorney look at it, just to make sure there's nothing. Nothing not attorney, like, you guys know this stuff. right?
No.
Is there something that our attorney should just review before we finally sign off on it?
So I defer to town staff on how that should be in these policies.
Are you asking, does it have to go through an ordinance? Does it have to go in the code?
Well, no,
Or
but I mean,
just
if we
a gen-
formalize something, I don't know if it's considered then like sort of a legal document that's kind of binding to a certain extent on the town. And if that's the case, should the attorney just look it over, very quickly, just to have.
Yeah.
Like a legal.
Might be
Yeah,
similar to
legal
other
opinions now,
policies
so
that
I think we
Mike's
do our
approved
canvas
and, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's generally good practice to run it by Rick.
Yeah.
Staff would write it, council would review it, make any changes,
And then,
then it would go before Rick,
Okay.
and then it would come back to you guys to vote on.
Okay.
That's, generally how things, would happen.
This is a question for, yeah, it is a question for you, Linda. So this fund, does it already include these others, like fire marshal fees, fire marshal inspections, and rescue billing? Is that automatically go into the current ambulance, or not in policy, in the ambulance reserve or ambulance fund? Yeah, so maybe,
Oh, there is more than just, there is more than just ambulance.
so then we probably need to word that in here, or that would be separate. I don't know how you would handle that.
So the rescue billing would be a second in line by size of collection revenues, let's say. So the primarily revenues comes from general fund ambulance fees that we transfer. And those could be from in FY 23 was over $400,000 that we transferred. This year in my quarterly report, I think I calculated 225,000 we already. You know, if we need to transfer, like if we transfer now, that's the amount. So those are the primarily sources of revenue for this, for the ambulance reserve fund. There are other sources of revenues that's very small, let's say, and little. Rescue building is it's falling between 30,000 to 49,000, right? It's still dollar amount, right? So if we wanna include all of those revenues line items, I think we should. I mean, that's a recommendation.
That's fire department related.
It's related
Rescue fees or
rescue building,
rescue building?
yes, rescue building, fire marshal inspection fees, fire marshals, ambulance fee, and also there is ambulance reserve sale of assets. Also there's part.
What's rescue building?
The rescue billing.
Yeah, sorry, I know that's not exactly my department.
Let's see if I can answer that.
I can answer that.
Oh, sure.
Thank you so much.
So rescue billing, if we go out on the highway, the town fire department has the option to collect from the state for using our manpower apparatus
Gotcha.
and so on and so forth.
Okay,
We get reimbursed by the state.
got it. Okay,
We actually use federal.
got it. Thank you.
Because those three categories aren't that huge total, like, I have a really old sheet from last year I have is 2022, between the, what I had at that time was like 45,000 or something, but that
That
makes
is
sense.
correct, 45,157.
I do think we should probably list all of the sources for the,
Yeah.
and we're gonna have the policy, right? Like what specific sources of income go into the.
Because now that would make sense that you would sit for fire, right, yeah.
Right.
Right?
But if I can add, in case we're gonna have additional revenue sources, are you gonna revise now? Do you wanna say any revenue that comes in this reserve fund?
So do you mean
The
in
relate-
addition to like book things going in there now?
Correct.
So like some
I
new
don't know,
stream
I don't know, I don't know the future, right? But
Including
it
but
could
not
be
limited to.
AI created, you know, billing, or, I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
anything else, like, if we change the
Yeah.
naming,
I
or if
guess,
we tracking.
You can always modify the policy,
Okay.
just a new category of revenue that comes in.
yeah, I guess my 2 cents would be kind of like what we did with the cannabis fund. It's good, I think, if you get like this new consistent stream of revenue to just have the council at the end, like, what do we want to do with that money? You know, an amending policy is not a huge deal, so probably good to keep it discreet. My 2 cents. Thoughts. So it seems like we got some good feedback. I think we'll definitely need to have it on the agenda again with Chief Lightel here and get his thoughts. But I guess in the meantime, Councilor Yuchek, I know you've been, would you be willing to maybe look into a couple of actions or
Yeah, if
thoughts?
the council doesn't mind.
Yeah.
There's no problem.
Okay, I think
Might
what
be
I,
something that,
yeah, I think what I heard, and please correct me if I'm missing something, was change the wording so that it encompasses all the revenue streams that are going into the fund today. Let me know.
And I'll copy, of course, Jacob, I mean, not Jacob, you are, of course.
Yeah,
So you can share it with Jen.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Revisit the wording for council approval and just make sure it's pretty streamlined and easy to get exemptions, if the need arises.
Okay.
And then revisit the minimum balance, maybe see if we can do some homework and figure out, tie that number to something, so it's a little less arbitrary.
I don't know if I can do that, I don't know if Violetta can do that, or not. I don't. No, do I say-
She's like,
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
change the
so that would
meeting
be-
or whatever.
I'll just put like a line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we just, if you
Yeah,
can leave it open, I feel like we should talk with experts.
Would I assume that Brian would be working on that with John as well? And
Yeah.
John, did you have it? I know you had some. Jacob already, questions or concerns. You might want. Please don't give me like a novel.
No, I'm just trying to think if there was anything. I think that's
it.
pretty much it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we're good. Thank you, everybody, for that. It was a good discussion. So I'll move on to item 8.4, is appointments to vacancies, of which there are none. So move on from that too fast. I'm trying to remember what is next. Are we on to old business, of which there's also none on the agenda again. Report of the town manager.
We don't have a formal one written this month, but Brian had asked Teresa, Assistant Human Service Director, come and talk about the Monday night meeting that's being funded with some of our opiate funds. Following up on with the mental health task force.
Thank you.
You've had a long day with auditions.
Yeah, so it's been from auditions. The kids have been great. So thank you for having me. So town manager Foley and Beverly had asked me to come in and speak to a way we are using the opioid settlement funds. It's a free community event that we have coming up. It's co-hosted by Youth Services and the local prevention council. It's going to be at Tolland High School on March 28th. It's from 5:30 to 8 p.m. So this event, the focus is positive mental health, substance abuse prevention, and wellness. So it's a wellness expo and community presentation. From 5:30 to 6:30, we have 17 vendors coming, and they are going to be offering, giveaways and telling residents about their services. So we're going to have that for the first hour, and then Stephen Hill's going to speak. He's the founder of Speak Sobriety. He was a keynote speaker at a national prevention conference, and he has kind of been the talk of Connecticut since. At all the youth service meetings that we have statewide, everybody wants to get him. He is very heavily booked, and he does come with a pretty high cost. So towns have been kind of debating what we can do about that. So then I had presented the idea of using the opioid settlement fund so that we could secure him. And we were able to get him right before prom, which we're really excited about. So he's going to come to this evening event, but during the day, he's also going to come to the high school, and he's going to speak to grades 9 through 12. He's going to do an assembly, and then he's going to go class to class and do small workshops with the students and really have meaningful conversations with small groups of students. So we're really excited to have him. And since promoting the event, we've had a few towns reach out. So South Windsor and Vernon have reached out to ask kind of like, how did Tolland manage to secure him? So I'm really proud because we are kind of at the forefront of this. He's going to be coming to South Windsor and Vernon in the fall. So I'm really hoping that we can kind of promote the event, get a lot of attendance for the community. It'll be nice that he's going to mirror that same message from the students to the parents kind of in one day. And also at that time of year right before prom and graduation and some of those celebrations. So we're really proud for the event. We really hope that you guys can promote it. This is a huge thank you to you for allowing us to kind of carry on that work of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Task Force. The Board of Ed has been a huge collaborator as well, and of course the town manager. So I'm here to promote the event, but also say thank you. And I did bring you all a little bit of swag that I hope that you come to the event and I hope that you wear it. We're also giving it to Stephen Hill, so we thought maybe we could get a group photo. I'm happy to answer any questions about the event, but I am going to give you your bags.
Thank you.
Teresa's really good at this.
Okay, so that's Alex. Did anyone have any questions? Or walk around?
Teresa, who are the vendors?
No, that's great.
Huge list of vendors, so I can go through.
I can filibuster while you're doing that. Not a question. I just want to thank you for all the your whole department does with everything. You guys provided a much needed service to the community. You guys all go above and beyond everything that you do. And Teresa, thank you for everything you did to put this together as well with the rest of the company as well. Fantastic, fantastic work, Walter. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to speak to the vendors. So we do have Community Child Guidance Clinic. ECHN is coming. Yukon Health is actually running a study right now for kids in that age group, that 14 to young adult age bracket. It's a free study, and so they're going to be promoting that. Hockham Valley Community Council, We Love Yoga, the local prevention council. Lincoln will be there, our therapy dog at the youth services table. Amplify, Residents Healing Arts, the Commission on People with Disabilities, Integral House,
the Family Resource Center in Tolland, Newport Healthcare, the Tolland Farmers Market, the Tolland Fire Department, and then the Tolland School Psychologists and Social Workers kind of came together, so they're gonna have a table. And then Responsible Play CT is gonna have their anti-gambling and responsible gambling ban in the front. So those are our vendors. Yeah.
Chris has been working on this nonstop process with
Yeah.
Julia and Lisa, so.
Yes, yeah, we're really excited about it. So we're hoping for a big turnout. I know it's hard to get people back in the building after the day is over, but with you guys wearing your hats around town, I think everyone's gonna wanna join us. So I appreciate it very much. And
Yeah.
any other questions I'm happy to answer.
Thank you for all your hard work. So, do you have a question?
No,
Okay,
no,
alright. So just quick question. Sorry if you covered it already, but is the high school programming differing much from the evening event, or are they kind of similar, or how's
So
it?
he will tailor his message. So his story, he was from an affluent family. He was a student athlete, a student, kind of, had all the right things going for him. And he talks about how, a few wrong turns and he really had to make a big comeback. And so now he's a lawyer, he's an advocate, he's a public speaker. So he kind of talks to them about, the influence you can have on other peers and that predisposition to using substances. So even if you are using and you might not have that same predisposition, you could impact someone who's younger than you. He does a lot of work with sports captains. So he's kind of talking about that peer to peer and those personal decisions with the kids. And then in the evening, he's really going to tailor it more towards the caregiver and the community aspect. He certainly will touch upon aspects of both. I've gotten a few parent emails of wanting to bring some middle schoolers to the event as well. So he will, he always makes it appropriate for the audience, but in the evening, he is talking about kind of building a stronger community, how to recognize the signs in your own child and things like that.
Oh, that sounds excellent. Again, thank you so much for your hard work putting this on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. I hope to see everybody there.
Any other questions or comments or concerns? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the stuff.
Yeah.
Is that it for our town manager's report? Good. All right. So that brings us to item 11, which is adoption of minutes. We've got a book full of minutes to approve. Yes. I'll make a motion or I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. And then someone else can go there. So moved. All right. So a second. All right. Is there any discussion? Yep.
I just wanna, on the April 8th regular meeting minute. I was on the first cheered and we were done in 5 minutes. I'm excited. But when Brian was giving his town manager report, I'm like, I don't think that's right. So he mentioned that the boat that they got for DPW in the fire department came out of ARPA. And I went back in the minutes, it actually came out of the DNRB fund. Did I get those letters right? So I just wanted to correct that. So, and that was voted on at our October 8th, 2024 meeting. So I just wanted to correct that it came out of the correct fund.
So does that change the minutes, or does that simply correct a misstatement during the meeting?
It's a good question.
True, I mean, if you said it.
I would assume maybe you could leave the minutes as is, and then maybe just put like
Bracketed and
a clarifying.
The
I
update?
feel like we've done this
Yeah,
before.
I think we did.
Can we?
But I think I think that's what we did. Maybe we left the minutes and then just put like a disclaimer almost. Like,
maybe, sorry.
no, it's okay.
Did we this is sorry to get metaphysical, but did we just change it in the subsequent, like in tonight's minutes? It's
Oh, that's right. That's what we did.
Yeah, it's gonna say.
There you go.
Right, like calling, because Brian actually said that, right?
We just
But
corrected it.
you corrected it tonight.
So that's in the minutes.
Yeah.
It's
I was just saying, yeah, no,
I think I got
yeah,
one.
no.
And it goes back and says, oh, that's wasn't on the offer list. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's what we just did. Yeah, so, yeah, just the minutes after this.
Okay. So I'm not amending the minutes, but we will of course record this conversation and then April 22nd minutes will be correct. Is that?
Yeah, as long as it's correct in minutes, I don't mind where it is. It's just I want it to be accurate.
Yeah. Okay. So All those in favor or to approve the minutes as is, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? None? All right, approve those minutes. Correspondence to council, so you would check any correspondence report?
I think we just got, I went back yesterday, double check, I think we just got one today regarding the budget. Look at it or just include it next meeting. If you want. I haven't got a chance to read the whole thing. But, yeah, unless somebody else did and they can report on that one, but other than that, I didn't see any other ones.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it was regarding the proposed budget.
Okay. Chairperson's report, I don't have a whole lot, I'll just say I thank Beth for serving as our acting town manager this week. Brian's away. She your help. And
Thank you for making the meeting easy.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
we're almost done. So go to item 14, communications and petitions. So there's any communications and petitions. What? Did you do two things? Okay.
So, first of all, I think I mentioned it when we talked one time, update on the lawsuit with the sidewalks. I don't know if you or Chris were able to talk with Brian, is there any update on that, or just we'll get an update for the next council meeting?
I had the chance to speak with them.
I haven't spoken with it, but I think I think the driver should get an update. I don't think much has happened.
Okay.
They can try to push it. Asking for
Various
extensions of time.
sides have been requesting continuances for the status hearings and stuff, so really nothing has happened.
Yeah.
No,
So if we have
It's unfortunate.
it just keeps getting continued and
Yeah.
continued.
Yeah, to your point, we should probably get an update, so
Yeah.
Brian's this week, so. Update.
And then I just want to mention this, but the last budget meeting. It's really more whoever's on the next council, but I don't know if it's something we can get started as this, we can't get it in this budget season. But when, and you all have a copy of it, one of the questions that Jason Lawrence was there another way to help seniors, and he said we could go back to order 60, and there's like a homestead act, but you have to be here for 10 years, but it does help seniors, so maybe in a month or two, if we just wanna talk about it. It's something I know we wouldn't probably get done this year, but at least it gets all rolling for the next council, which sits up there. Maybe get something for that next budget that could help seniors. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
I think it's something that we should explore. It's the idea was proposed, I think Jason's email is basically, let's see if there's something beyond 60 that we could enact that doesn't exist today. There's a lot of moving pieces to that, but
Yeah, it sounds like it.
it would be a good thing to at least start this term and finish. It might be a longer conversation, but a good idea, I agree.
Give Jason a little break.
Yeah.
Or maybe like a June or July, something.
Yeah. Yep. It's a very real concern.
Yeah, if there's something up there. That's all I have.
Yep. Right. Counselors. All right, we'll go to our final public participation of the night. This public participation has a 3-minute limit. So I'll go to the room first.
Because they were online, right? So, Dennis Deegan, 689, you're okay, let's sit here. 689 Tolland Stage Road. They're in Tolland. So I have spent a fair amount of time going back a couple of months getting an understanding for the whole reevaluation process and the impact that has on taxes, etc. It started, quite honestly, because of the impact to the residents where I live, which as a result of that, I spent time asking lots of questions in the assessor's office to try to understand what was going on. So the net of that is that this, call it macro reevaluation process, actually looks at and figures into the different variables that are on everyone's whatever that sheet is that you link to when you see how your property is valued. So the style of home, the age of the home, the square footage, all of that. So as I understand it, that this reevaluation process, even though, as I say, it's a macro, not someone walking through your house, that the factors that were used by, I think, a Marshall and Swift program actually takes all that into consideration, so that if your house is not in the correct style, i.e. it's a ranch when it should be a colonial or vice versa, that by each style of home, there's basically a valuation that goes towards and figures into, say, square footage costs. So there's this whole process is not just okay, homes went up by X% in this town and that's it, okay? So it's really more sophisticated than that, even though it is a macro model, as I understand it. So as a result of that, and the fact that the residential side of things basically took the entire brunt of reevaluation. I was looking at the macro numbers this morning in the assessor's office, and my memory is, I think it was roughly $5 million, 5.2 million, and 5 million of that was actually residential and the rest was elsewhere. So basically the whole impact comes out of residential, which I know has been talked about, but not necessarily, in my view, talked about as to how to understand that. So when you look at the effect of that, and we talk about a 3% or 3.01% increase to the budget, I believe that's very misleading as to what's happening to the average resident in town. Because the average resident in town is not going to get less than a 6-some-odd% increase. Okay, it just isn't. And we heard some people, I was at the senior center last week for a presentation.
Sorry, the 3 minutes have been up.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to continue.
No, I'm sorry.
You can have
It's
my
the
time.
rules. No, that's not how it works. We're gonna go online, but we're happy to have an offline conversation with our
I don't
staff.
want an offline. So before, when you go to
Sorry.
somebody else who's not somebody else, the person can come back up. Can I come back up?
We'll go online first. Is there anybody online? We'll go back to the room. All right, I'll allow you to finish your statement.
Thank you. Okay, so I want really detailed ad that I think people in the town should like to know. So I'll just jump to the end. No person in their right mind in this town should vote for this budget. It's very unsophisticated, it's rudimentary, and it doesn't take into consideration in a way that it should for what's happening in town. So please vote no for this budget and have the council go back and put together a budget that takes into consideration the needs of this town and takes advantage of all the access that you have to funds. There's absolutely no reason why you're building a capital fund in this town to some excessive level unless somebody has an agenda item that they want to use that for. Thank you very much. And I'll tell you, you're just as rude tonight as you have been in other nights.
Thank you, sir. I'll go back online one more time.
For no one who's here, you're really out of order.
We'll go back to the room. All right, seeing none. Close out public participation and we'll move to adjournment. Is there any objection to adjournment at 8:35 p.m.? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned at 8:35 p.m. Thank you.